after top United Nations officials brazenly opposed Donald Trump in the US election and even equated his tactics with the Islamic State, ISIS. Senior UN bureaucrats are reportedly in a panic following the historic electoral victory against the establishment. Among other comments, Trump has blasted the UN as a corrupt enemy of freedom and of the United States. Apparently the mood at the UN is still souring as the reality slowly sinks in, especially as it relates to the UN's imperiled climate schemes. Some foreign dictatorships, including the Chinese Communist regime, are also fretting, as are globalist UN subsidiary organizations such as NATO. Many advocates of national sovereignty, prosperity, and liberty, though, are celebrating around the world, hoping Trump will be able to successfully follow through on his anti-globalist campaign promises. In comments to establishment media organs, UN diplomats expressed dismay. The assumption is that a Trump administration will be less engaged with UN than Obama's administration, which was more committed to working for collective, globalist, solutions than previous US administrations, an unnamed supposed diplomat was quoted as saying by Reuters. Based on the names of possible UN ambassadors floated so far in the media, there is a good chance that the US government might start at least getting tough on the dictator-dominated UN, which under the Obama administration has become increasingly extreme in openly attacking the United States and the God-given rights of Americans. Another anonymous diplomat was quoted predicting that the impact of Trump's victory on the UN will be a long hangover. However, considering the UN's treatment of Trump while on the campaign trail, not to mention its hostility to freedom, national sovereignty, the U.S. Constitution, and genuine human rights, some supporters of national sovereignty hope to continue advancing an American exit, or Amexit, from the UN. Legislation already sitting in Congress, the American Sovereignty Restoration Act, would end U.S. government participation in a controversial, dictator-dominated global body that Trump said is an enemy of the United States. He has good reason to feel that way. As the New American reported in September, the UN's High Commissioner for what the UN misleadingly refers to as human rights, a Muslim prince who hates gun rights and free speech but loves open borders, could not have been more ruthless in his assault on now President-elect Trump. The UN bureaucrat claimed, among other things, that Trump was dangerous. He even alleged that Trump and other so-called populists allegedly used tactics similar to those used by ISIS, which chops off heads, blows up innocent people, and enslaves women and children for sex. The UN official's bizarre meltdown got so absurd that leading UN member states filed formal complaints against the scandal-plagued UN bureaucrat and told him to stick to his job duties. The human rights official, of course, is infamous mostly for trying to cover up the rape of children by peace troops in Africa, and then seeking to destroy the whistleblower who exposed it. The Muslim royal also claimed international law required that robust gun control be imposed on Americans after the jihadist attack in Florida that left 50 disarmed victims dead. Especially concerned about Trump are national and international bureaucrats involved in the global warming apparatus. As UN climate bureaucrats meet in Morocco under the guise of battling alleged man-made warming, concerns about UN officials' high-paying jobs and the broader globalist agenda are spreading, especially after Trump vowed to cancel the Paris Agreement pseudo-treaty. For American voters tired of the establishment, that was the whole idea. Just 40% of Americans even believe the man-made global warming theory. The UN climate machine and its lackeys have good reason to be nervous. In 2012, Trump argued that the concept of global warming was created by and for the Chinese in order to make U.S. manufacturing non-competitive. Amid record cold and snow in 2014, Trump wondered where the alleged warming was hiding, suggesting the failed warming prophecies were behind the PR term climate change. Trump also regularly ridiculed Obama and other global warming alarmists over their theory and proposed policies to deal with alleged warming. Ahead of his victory this week, Trump had indicated that, if he were to be elected, the Paris Agreement was as good as dead. In a May speech, he blasted the draconian climate rules and vowed to cancel the pseudo-treaty as soon as he takes office. America should never give foreign bureaucrats control over how much energy we use, he also declared, promising to eliminate all U.S. taxpayer funding for UN global warming schemes. In the past, echoing numerous top scientists, Trump has repeatedly lambasted the increasingly discredited man-made global warming theory as a hoax, nonsense, and even bovine excrement, although he used a less polite term. Confident that Hillary would be elected, UN climate boss Patricia Espinosa said before the election that there was no plan B in case Trump was elected. It remains a treaty that is in force, she claimed, falsely, since all treaties in the United States must be constitutional and must be ratified by 2/3 of U.S. senators to be legitimate. What we will do is be vigilant and attentive. More than a few climate alarmists and UN apparatchiks have spoken of American commitments, without realizing, perhaps, that Obama has no power to make binding commitments for the nation on his own. Now, though, the mood has changed, with attendees at the UN summit expressing despair on Twitter. And the UN has good reason to be concerned about the future of its climate schemes. As the New American reported in February, Obama's unconstitutional power grabs to comply with the UN's pseudo-treaty on climate were blocked by the Supreme Court and were almost certain to be crushed as unconstitutional, at least until Justice Scalia died unexpectedly. Now, with Trump set to appoint a new justice, and with the executive branch able to undo Obama's illegal agreement and decrees, the totalitarian Paris Agreement is unlikely to survive, assuming Trump fulfills even some of his electoral pledges. Trump could, for example, simply reverse all the regulations and orders the Obama administration issued on the subject, especially the Clean Power Plan. The GOP Congress could also just defund them all. And thanks to a Clinton administration-era law, U.S. funding for the UN's climate bureaucracy remains illegal under federal law. Indeed, as the New American has been reporting since attending the UN Climate Summit in Paris last year, the entire foundation of the globalist scheme was built on quicksand, contributing to its almost certain demise. Pro-liberty environmental groups such as the Committee for a Constructive Tomorrow, CFACT, which has a team in Morocco at the UN's COP22 climate summit, were celebrating the developments. CFACT has worked for years to replace radical climate and energy policy with sound science and economics, said Craig Rucker, executive director of the market-oriented environmentalist group. Now, the astounding election of Donald Trump has created the greatest opportunity for genuine reform in decades. CFACT's delegation to this year's UN Climate Conference, taking place right now in Marrakech, Morocco, finds itself newly empowered to help the US escape the crushing and unequal burdens the UN's Paris Agreement would impose on the free world. At this moment, as a result of the smashing Trump victory, your voice is being taken more seriously than it has been in years, continued Rucker. The left is in disbelief. We must seize this precious opportunity and press our advantage to the full. But don't think the Green Left and UN bureaucrats are taking this sitting down. They will surely try to add on to the climate agreement a bag of their favorite goodies in the waning days of the Obama tenure, maybe even some that try to secure a binding agreement that can't be abridged. He suggested UN bureaucrats might even try to funnel more US wealth into the dictator-dominated Green Climate Fund, and perhaps even the establishment of a World Climate Court purporting to extend rights to Mother Earth. Unsurprisingly, the mood among UN types at the broader bureaucracy is not good. Reliable globalist propaganda organs such as Reuters, which regularly partners with the UN to promote its anti-liberty agenda, acknowledged the unease among UN bureaucrats. Trump's election was met with disbelief and despondency on Wednesday among some United Nations officials and diplomats, reported the self-styled news agency the day after the vote in an article headlined "Disbelief, Questions at United Nations After Trump Victory." Trump has been vocal about the UN on the campaign trail. The United Nations is not a friend of democracy. It's not a friend to freedom. It's not a friend even to the United States of America, whereas all know, it has its home. The real estate mogul told the American-Israel Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC, while on the campaign trail. And it surely isn't a friend to Israel. Earlier this year, Trump also ridiculed the UN as a political game, calling for smaller numbers, presumably a reference to downsizing the globalist organization. That was before a top UN boss compared Trump to ISIS. After all the abuse it heaped on Trump, going so far as to send out a tweet urging Americans abroad to vote against him, the UN and its leaders were suddenly left scrambling to make amends. The day after the election, for example, UN boss Ban Ki-moon, who now touts the UN as the Parliament of Humanity, supposedly congratulated Trump on his victory. In the aftermath of a hard-fought and often divisive campaign, it is worth recalling and reaffirming that the unity in diversity of the United States is one of the country's greatest strengths, he said. The United Nations will count on the new administration to strengthen the bonds of international cooperation as we strive together to uphold shared ideals, combat climate change, advance human rights, promote mutual understanding and implement the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, to achieve lives of peace, prosperity and dignity for all. The UN SDGs are basically a dictator-backed roadmap to global tyranny, wealth redistribution and all. The communist Chinese dictatorship and NATO have also been publicly fretting about Trump. At the White House, news reports also suggest a growing sense of doom, too, with Politico reporting that Obama and his aides are in crisis mode seeking to nail anything and everything they can down. But it is too late. They've already lost the chance to lock in Obama's vision of America, one that is educated and pragmatist, multicultural, cosmopolitan and globalist, the left-wing online media organ reported, noting that Obama had said for months that a Trump victory would be a repudiation of his agenda. It was. Whether Trump will be able to make good on all of his campaign promises remains to be seen. But with enough public pressure on Congress, and the clear and unmistakable signal sent in the November 8 election, the chances for a restoration of sanity in international affairs have never been better. With Republicans in charge of both houses of Congress, and the American electorate providing a clear mandate against globalism, it is past time for the UN to be relegated to the ash heap of history. Passing the American Sovereignty Restoration Act and securing an amicus would set the globalists back decades, and would help Trump make good on his campaign's central pledge to make